Welcome to another episode of Rich Politics. Hey, I'm so glad you've taken the time to watch this today. It's Sunday, it's the weekend. So much has been going on in politics here in Wales and of course in the UK, and I'm going to share some of those things with you today on my usual rant here on Rich Politics. Thanks to all my new subscribers, and those who haven't yet, please hit the subscribe button so you can be updated on the next broadcast. Follow us on Twitter. I'd really appreciate it so we can share these broadcasts with a much wider audience. Well, by 6 p.m. tonight, half of Wales will be on lockdown. That's right, the Cardiff Bay Emperor, Mark Drakeford, has decided that Wales will be under some form of restriction or full lockdown in different parts of Wales. You know, the effects this is having on people's mental health is a big issue. I've been speaking to people this week who've been saying, Rich, I don't know if I can cope anymore. Some people are not sure about their jobs, not sure about any support that's out there, especially for the self-employed sector. So many big questions that are having a huge impact on people's mental health. You know, these measures have been quite stringent throughout Wales. We have kind of local county lockdowns, and then we have a Wales-wide lockdown with different rules for different areas, and which has been quite challenging for people to navigate their way through the confusion that's come from Cardiff Bay. Well, what a week it's been. Yesterday, I must report, let me just have a sip of my coffee first. It is Sunday after all. Yesterday, I was attacked quite violently, not physically, but verbally, by the Welsh Nationalists. I was out campaigning, which is my democratic right to campaign for my party, which is abolish the Welsh Assembly Party, in Abergavenny, which is not under restrictions or under any form of lockdown. And they took to Twitter, the Twitterati, to absolutely go at me, really, just really have a go at me with vile comments saying they wish I'd caught COVID. Yes, that's right. These are people who are campaigning for Welsh independence. This is the kind of hatred and vitriol you get from these people. It amounts sometimes to something that I've never experienced. You know, when I was living in Llanelli on the streets as a young tearaway, I mean, you could have a fight fist on fist, but these people don't do that. They're keyboard warriors. You know the people I'm on about. They sit behind their keyboards. They're really big and strong and hard. Come and have a go if you're big enough and all that. Really, they're still living with their mother and probably watching Crossroads. But that's another story altogether. But the reality is, I was out campaigning yesterday. We had a phenomenal time speaking to members of the public in a COVID-compliant way, and it was fantastic to hear the conversation. So many people sense that what devolution is doing for them is failing them, and so there were some fantastic conversations. But what I want to bring to your attention is this, that these people on Twitter and social media who were attacking me and accusing me of breaking lockdown rules were absolutely wrong. They accused me of travelling, which I hadn't, outside of a locked up, restricted area, which I hadn't, because they didn't have the facts. They jumped to conclusions without knowing the facts. And as they say, assumption is the mother of all you know what. And so, what happened was they went and contacted Gwent Police. And I woke up this morning and I had a message from Gwent Police, which I'm going to read to you now. And you know, when you wake up in the morning, the first thing you don't want to read is a message from Gwent Police. And this is what they had to say in regard to my visit to Abergavenny, or my time in Abergavenny town yesterday. In fact, listen, watch the video. This is what I did in Abergavenny yesterday. Check this out. So we've had a fantastic day today, this morning with the team here in Abergavenny, letting people know, abolish the Welsh Assembly Party are here to give the people of Abergavenny a voice. Okay, so that's all I did yesterday, was campaigning, of course, speaking to people. And Gwent Police contacted me this morning with this. They've been receiving comments that I was from Blaenau and it was in lockdown, and I was canvassing in Abergavenny, so it seems there were concerns. As long as you're from the Monmouthshire area and adhering to social distancing guidelines, it'll be advisable to wear a mask if talking to people. Well, firstly, you only have to wear a mask indoors, not outdoors, and I was 2 meters apart from each person that I spoke with. But Gwent Police then, I contacted them and responded by saying, thank you very much for your comments. However, as a dad and a responsible father, I was not breaking any rules, and of course, disclosing my address or personal residence would not be going on any social media or platform for others to obtain, which is my right, of course. And of course, I went on to ask them, why is it that these people that were making such accusations and actually saying, I wish he'd catch COVID, if you came to Carnarvon, for example, you wouldn't survive. These amount to what I call threats, communication of threats to me. And so I've asked the police to investigate, and I've logged a complaint with them. But it's interesting that the Welsh Nationalists, for whatever reason, are the most nastiest people. Some of you outside of Wales might not get this. You may be in Scotland with the SNPs and stuff. You may do. I often wonder to myself what goes through these people's minds, because they're not going to win an argument. They're not looking to win an argument, because whenever you lay the argument before them on Welsh independence, you ask them 3 questions. What are you going to do about the borders? What are you going to do about the deficit? That's about £13.5 billion. And what are you going to do about your currency? Now, some or most of those Welsh independent people I speak to, they want to rejoin the EU. So make no doubt about it that Plaid Cymru in particular, and many of the Welsh Nationalist Party who want Welsh independence, they don't really want independence, they want to rejoin the EU, which we voted to leave. Wales voted to leave. So that's just some stuff that's been going on with the Welsh Nats. I've spoken to the police and assured them that I have not broken any laws or restrictions or anything of that nature. And of course, I'm a responsible father. Why would I do that? And so a little bit more about yesterday then. Well, those attacks were quite vehement towards me. I felt as if, the police were not really listening to my side of the story, listening to the people sending them messages, trying to accuse me of something I hadn't done. I didn't feel protected, and I've also spoken to the police about that, because people were obsessed with about knowing where I live. Now, if I can just say this, where I live is nobody's business. It's none of your business. This is my private home, where I have 5 children and a wife that I look after and protect, roof over our heads. It's our family home. Where we live is nobody's business. But you see, such is the hatred and the vitriol that comes from the Welsh Nationalists, that they feel some divine right to know everything about you, every detail about your life, so then they can absolutely slaughter you online. Well, here's news for you. It didn't work. And all you've done is encourage me to campaign even more, so that we get a referendum, not just with Welsh independence on the ballot paper, but with the option of abolishing the Assembly or the Senedd here in Wales, which there is a large growing number of people wanting, as well as Welsh independence, according to polls back in June. Thank you all for your support on Twitter. I really appreciate your kind words as well in responding to some of these idiots, because that's exactly what they are. Well, this weekend, of course, we've seen the protests on the street of London, the anti-lockdown protests. Now, this is a bit difficult, isn't it? Given the fact that you've had groups, Extinction Rebellion or Black Lives Matter, you've had different groups protesting on the streets, yet that was allowed to go ahead, and we had a protest yesterday that turned nasty, which, by the way, I don't agree with violence. I agree with peaceful protesting. I support our police. I believe in the rule of law, which is important in a civilized society, of course. But nevertheless, it's interesting that that protest was looked down upon, and Sadiq Khan, the Mayor of London, said it shouldn't have gone ahead. Sadiq Khan, where were you when Extinction Rebellion were blocking entry to hospitals where people had cancer appointments, and when Black Lives Matter were out on the streets in their tens of thousands on the streets of London? Where were you then? Why didn't you condemn the protest? Now, I'm not talking about each of those groups and what they believe and what they don't believe. That's not what this is about. It's about the principle. You can't apply the law to one group of protesters and not to the others. And what happened, the scenes yesterday were quite shameful. But I have to say that the police are under huge pressure at the moment here in our country, and I often wonder whether it's because of this narrative that's fed from mainstream media sometimes, and by some of these groups that are out there, like defund the police. And so you want to defund the police and have community policing. I have never heard anything so ridiculous in all my life. That means to say that you'd have people that would police themselves in communities, so there'll be no real law and order. What a paradise for criminals that would be. It's a stupid idea. And so anybody that promotes such a concept of defunding the police needs to be defunded themselves. And of course, the police are under huge pressure. You know, we heard of, sadly, the officer in Croydon that was shot. Such a tragic, such a tragic thing to happen. His family and his friends must be devastated, and of course his colleagues, and my deepest condolences and sympathy are with them. I contacted a friend of mine who is a serving Met officer in London and shared with him that we would be thinking and praying for him and his colleagues at such a tragic time. And it begged the question, really, should our police officers be armed in police stations? It's a question. I'm not saying it should happen like in America, where every cop is, armed to the teeth with guns, walking the streets, but maybe like we got in airports, where police are armed for their own safety and the safety of the public. Maybe our police stations could do with that, with a bit more security for our police officers who need our support, because I've noticed over the last few months there's been a real attack on the police force here in this country, and of course they're under huge strain, huge pressure. They can't do right from wrong. So if they stop and search somebody, it's wrong. If they don't stop and search somebody and they commit a crime, then they're wrong. Our police need our support, and of course it doesn't help them when you have the mainstream media promoting certain narratives that don't help us to understand what the police are actually going through. Well, that Croydon shooting obviously was a serious thing, and I think lots of people were saddened by it. It was a tragedy that should never have happened. But the big question is, should our police be armed? Personally, I think they should. I think in all of our police stations, our police officers who are stationed in the actual building itself should be armed like they are at the airport. I think that's important for people so they feel safe and they can protect themselves at the same time. This week as well, I was tuned into a brand new broadcast by my friends at Unlocked. Martin Dubney and the team there did a fantastic job hosting a live broadcast of their debate, or I say debate, it was more of a chat about the European Union and the exodus potentially of many member states. It was interesting to see some of the phrases that come out. Obviously Brexit was for the UK, then there's Frexit for France, and then there's Italexit for Italy, and then there's the Netherlands, of course, where latest poll there, 55% of people in the Netherlands want a referendum. And Rob Ross gave a fantastic talk on what is happening there in the Netherlands. And we're seeing maybe the beginning of something, a movement, an exodus of these member states realising that the European Union as a project is continuing to fail them. This has been highlighted by us coming out of the EU as well as the UK, and the negotiations that have been going on, and how Brussels has tried to bully us. They shouldn't bully us, and Boris should stand strong and firm, and all those involved in negotiations should not give in to the European Union's demands. We are a sovereign nation taking back control of our money, our borders and everything else and our laws, and that's how it should be. But it's interesting to see the desire of so many people within or part of the European Union, member states, leading voices, MEPs who are already in the belly of the beast, who are really campaigning hard to leave the European Union because of its undemocratic bureaucracy, the waste of tens of millions or sometimes billions of pounds that they see, and the lavish lifestyle that they live in. They want to get out of there because they see the corruption. And I predict that we are going to see a number of these countries leave the European Union. Oh, so what about the SNP then? Good old Ian Blackford, when he takes to his feet, everyone leaves the House of Commons, or us at home at least press mute, or we leave and make ourselves a cup of coffee and come back normally in about an hour when he's finished. But, Scotland's under great pressure at the moment. As many of you know, they're in lockdown as well. I think Nicola Sturgeon has now said that students have to stay in halls of residence over Christmas. Here in Wales, Mark Drakeford is hinting towards the same, so that students somehow have to be banged up over Christmas because it's their fault, innit? Of course it's their fault. Not really, but that's what we're hearing. And we see Trump on his campaign with Joe Biden. Joe Biden giving fantastic speeches, going off cue a little bit now and again. I think he claimed to be campaigning for the last 180 years. I tell you what, he's looking good for his age, that's all I can say. What else has been going on this week then? Well, I noticed in the press that Sir Patrick Vallance has got shares of £600,000 in a firm contracted to develop vaccines. Yes, you could say that's a little bit of a conflict of interest. In my opinion, it is, of course, a conflict of interest. But how many more politicians have conflict of interests in these big pharmaceutical companies? There's probably lots of them. There needs to be more transparency in some of these politicians because we don't see it on a regular basis. That doesn't boost confidence in the public. Thanks for taking the time to tune into the broadcast today. I hope you enjoyed my rant, and I hope to catch you on the next broadcast on Rich Politics.